Welcome to Demystifying Iran. The summons of world leaders to Egypt by U.S. President Donald Trump laid bare a painful truth about their role in the Palestinian struggle. Despite the handshakes and smiles and Sharm el-Sheikh, the airstrikes, the slaughter, and the deadly siege never ceased. The ceasefire, a cruel fiction. Now, infants freeze to death under that siege, and children are shot and murdered while gathering wood or playing by their tents. The stage was set earlier in the Knesset. There, Trump declared an Israel-first allegiance. He invoked Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam, making clear that their primary loyalty was not to America, but to the Israeli regime, and that they held an extraordinary and abnormal influence over him. Adelson himself once stated, "I am a one-issue person. That issue is Israel." Elsewhere in his Knesset speech, Trump added a pointed reminder: his own daughter's conversion to Judaism, forsaking her belief in Jesus, was driven not by a study of religion, but by her love for the Israeli regime and Zionism. What followed in Egypt was more than hypocrisy. It was a chilling performance. Leaders gathered for a clown show, their presence a whitewash for Trump, who played a central role in the Gaza Holocaust. We witnessed the transactional gratitude, Trump telling Erdogan, "Every time I've ever needed him, he's been there for me," met by Erdogan's hand solemnly placed upon his chest. We heard a nation crudely reduced to its wealth as Trump greeted the UAE's Sheikh Mansour. He said, "Lot of cash, unlimited cash." It was an attempt to remake a partner in genocide into a peacemaker. Each leader sought a place in Trump's good book, and the price of admission was the blood of Palestinian women and children. Even basic courtesies were denied. The co-host, Egypt's President Assisi, a man who should not need to co-host anyone on his own soil, was publicly snubbed, denied the simple dignity of a handshake. In the aftermath, the apologists emerged. Depending on affiliation, they spun tales of calculated moves by certain leaders for Palestine's ultimate good. The bitter irony? These same apologists, the Takfiri ones in particular, were quick to glorify those leaders by implying they practiced taghiyah. The concept of taghiyah finds its roots in the Holy Quran, in the story of Ammar ibn Yasir, who under severe torture renounced his faith. The Quran not only legitimized his act, but pronounced him firm in belief. Taghiyah is a shield for the powerless facing torture, atrocity, and murder. But that is not what these well-fed and comfortable leaders were facing. Why is this so deeply ironic? Because these are the very same antagonists of the axis of resistance who routinely wield a fabricated and twisted definition of taghiyah as a weapon. They attribute this definition of dishonesty and deceit to the resistance, accusing it of hypocrisy, claiming its support for Palestine is insincere, masking some hidden evil intent. Like Humpty Dumpty, the Takfiris distort the meaning of taghiyah to veil the enormous and unique sacrifices of the resistance. Why question the motives of the axis of resistance? Those under American auspices, who for decades funded Takfiri ideology, including ISIS and Al-Qaeda, have a vested interest in slandering the resistance. They seek to hide their own betrayal, complicity, and hypocrisy. Their oil and gas wealth then funds armies of financially motivated supporters and mouthpieces. But the men in Sharm el-Sheikh faced no torture. They were under no duress. They acted in naked self-interest. Unlike those leaders, the resistance has offered no hollow words, nor colluded with the authors of genocide. It has made immeasurable sacrifices over decades, and especially since October the 7th, 2023. Its commitment is measured not by photo ops and speeches, but by the number of martyrs, the maimed, and the destroyed lives. That is why Iran refused to participate in the circus. It refused to please the ringmaster, Trump. It would not ignore an ongoing genocide to win any favors. And make no mistake, Trump would have been very pleased to see an Iranian, any Iranian.
Oh, Victor, where is Victor? Victor, we love Victor. I would imagine Emmanuel standing someplace behind me. Where is he? I can't believe it. You're taking a low-key approach today. Where is she? There she is. You don't mind being called beautiful, right? Because you are. Where's the United Kingdom? Where's our friend? Where? Come here. Is everything going good?
Very good.
It's very nice that you're here.
To understand the principled stance of the Islamic Republic, one must first understand the past it emerged from. In 1950, the Shah extended de facto recognition to the Israeli regime. Immediately, commercial ties were forged, a route for Jewish migration was opened, and an Iranian consulate was established in Al-Quds. This diplomatic opening was brief. By July 1951, the government of the popular Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh responded to the powerful domestic and Islamic sentiment, formally withdrew that recognition and shuttered the consulate. But the British and American coup of 1953 changed everything. The restored Shah made a strategic pivot, weaving relations with the Zionist regime directly into his policy of so-called positive nationalism. This conveniently converged with the Israeli apartheid regime's peripheral doctrine. Both saw a common enemy in the rising tide of Arab nationalism, personified by Egypt's Jamal Abdel Nasser. By 1958, the relationship had deepened. The two regimes opened embassies in each other's capitals. The alliance grew. It encompassed military, agricultural, and extensive intelligence cooperation between the notorious Mossad and the Shah's dreaded Savak. Iran became a primary buyer of Israeli military hardware and, critically, the regime's main supplier of oil. Significantly, the Shah also became the main supplier of oil to apartheid South Africa. The Shah saw the Zionist regime's military victories over Arab states not as a tragedy, but as a welcome defeat for his rival Nasser. This close partnership was symbolized by a parade of Israeli leaders to Tehran: Golda Meir, Yitzhak Rabin, Moshe Dayan, and Menachem Begin all walked the halls of the Shah's palaces. Yet for all its depth, this was an affair the Shah insisted on keeping in the shadows. Historians often call it a secret love affair. He refused to upgrade ties to a full public ambassadorial level. He told his Zionist partners that so-called religious fanaticism of his own people was the insurmountable barrier to any open alliance. This was a decades-long entanglement that stood in stark contrast to the identity and aspirations of the Iranian nation. An immoral entanglement, like the one with apartheid South Africa, that the revolutionaries were determined to end. Long before the revolution, Imam Khomeini established the groundwork for the struggle against Zionism. In 1968, he issued an important fatwa regarding the Palestinian resistance, declaring that the struggle against Zionism was a religious obligation for all Muslims. The 1979 Islamic Revolution was more than a change of government in Tehran. It was an earthquake that fundamentally altered the region. Its most immediate and seismic shock was the complete severing of the Pahlavi's regime's strategic alliance with the Israeli regime. With the Shah's fall, Iran terminated its role as a key oil supplier, a vital economic partner, and a crucial base for Zionist intelligence. This was not merely a diplomatic shift. Opposition to the Shah's relationship with Israel, seen as support for the common enemy of Muslims, Palestinians, and the oppressed, had been a central motivating force behind Imam Khomeini's uprising itself. Of course, such a profound challenge to the established order could not go unanswered. In a stark convergence of interests, both the United States and Europe, alongside the Soviet Union, collaborated to undermine the revolution by instigating and supporting Saddam Hussein's aggression. This war was an explicit plot to destroy the Islamic Revolution, dismember Iran, and extinguish its rising ideal, today Iran, tomorrow Palestine. Largely through the oil wealth of its regional partners, NATO regimes provided Saddam Hussein with all manner of weapons, including chemical ones. I survived 2 such chemical attacks. Many others, including many thousands of Iranian and Iraqi civilians, didn't. A key consequence of this brutal aggression was that it forced a besieged Iran into a fight for its very existence. The nation's full strength was engaged, thereby granting the Israeli regime a freer hand to pursue its own Greater Israel plans elsewhere, especially in Lebanon. Yet despite the enormous difficulties, Iran continued to provide assistance through Damascus to the Lebanese resistance to expel the occupiers. Ultimately, the war intended to crush the revolution became the furnace in which its resolve was hardened. Imam Khomeini's strategy transcended mere policy. It was a comprehensive doctrine built upon foundational principles that would chart the struggle's course. First, he established the Islamic identity of the struggle. He declared that the fight must be rooted in the religious duty of supporting the oppressed. Nationalism and secularism, he argued, were insufficient Western imports for a broad and steadfast resistance. Second, he made a critical distinction separating Judaism from Zionism. He stated clearly, and I quote, "We make a clear distinction between the Jewish community in Zionism and the Zionists. They are not truly Jewish. They are a political movement that instrumentalizes the name of Judaism." Third, he championed the unity of the Islamic Ummah. He identified division, promoted by the West and its proxies, as the Muslim world's primary weakness. A unified Ummah, he said, could eradicate the puppet state of Israel. To achieve this, he focused on mobilizing Islamic capabilities. He declared International Quds Day and advocating reviving the Hajj as a platform for political awareness. He repeatedly called for an Islamic oil embargo against the Zionist regime and its supporters. He never wavered in exposing Greater Israel. He warned its goal was expansion from the Nile to the Euphrates, that any compromise was a tactical step towards this aim. At the heart of this was his belief in grassroots empowerment. If governments failed the oppressed, the people themselves were obligated to hold them accountable. After the revolution, Iran's foreign policy underwent a radical shift to include support for the global oppressed. It placed the liberation of Palestine and Southern Africa at its very core. The commitment was both symbolic and concrete. Yasser Arafat was the first foreign dignitary to visit Iran. The Israeli embassy in Tehran was transferred to the PLO, establishing the first Palestinian embassy in the capital. Iran officially recognized the PLO as the sole legitimate representative of the Palestinian people. And Imam Khomeini's declaration, "Today Iran, tomorrow Palestine," echoed throughout the region. But the Western-backed aggression against Iran in 1980 was a fire that tested this alliance. Differences began to emerge, leading to the gradual decline of the Iran-PLO relationship. Initially, the PLO attempted to position itself as a neutral mediator. However, its efforts were perceived as biased, its credibility weakening as its leadership was seen as moving closer to the brutal aggressor Saddam Hussein. From Iran's viewpoint, this was very difficult to stomach, not only regarding the repetitive meetings with Saddam, but what was even more hurtful was the 1986 meeting with Masoud Rajavi, leader of the anti-Iran Mayadeen Khalq, a treacherous Western-backed terror group and cult that murdered many thousands of Iranians in terror attacks and even fought as foot soldiers for Saddam. Despite this growing disappointment, Iran did not abandon the Palestinian people or the PLO. During the camp wars in Lebanon, Iran provided critical political and humanitarian support to the besieged Palestinian camps. This action solidified its ties with the different Palestinian factions. Later, even further damage to the relationship was caused by the PLO's strategic shift, publicly renouncing terrorism, a deeply politicized term, and accepting UN Security Council resolutions 242 and 338. The PLO implicitly recognized the apartheid state's right to exist. This signaled a pivot away from the armed struggle towards a diplomatic two-state solution, a path Iran has rejected as legitimizing occupation, ethnic cleansing, and apartheid, a path that Iran had no doubt would lead nowhere. In Iran's view, Yasser Arafat committed another mistake by deciding to frame the conflict as a solely Palestinian national issue. This decision set aside the crucial potential for both international and Islamic solidarity to liberate Jerusalem, a move that needlessly weakened the Palestinian resistance and weakened his own position on the road to compromise. Ayatollah Khomeini later characterized this attempt at compromise as a lesson in the futility of compromise with Zionism. The relationship between the Islamic Republic of Iran and Hamas was not born of mere convenience, but of shared conviction. It began soon after the movement's founding, with Tehran stepping in as a crucial patron at a pivotal moment. First came the International Conference in support of the Palestinian Intifada, held in Tehran in 1991, to oppose the Madrid Peace Conference. This rejected the U.S.-led peace process, a process that advanced only after the PLO was weakened by supporting Saddam Hussein's foolish invasion of Kuwait in 1990. A key event followed. In 1992, Israel deported 450 Hamas and Islamic Jihad members to Lebanon. This laid the foundation for their close brotherly and operational relationship with Iran and Hezbollah. That same year, Hamas opened its first permanent office in Tehran. This move further aligned the group with the rejectionist front, just as the PLO entered U.S.-sponsored peace talks. This alliance, however, would face a major test 2 decades later with the outbreak of the Syrian conflict. Iran and the political wing of Hamas found themselves on opposing sides of a U.S.-led proxy war. Iran provided critical support for the government of Syria, recognizing that the U.S. Operation Timber Sycamore was a conspiracy to strengthen the Israeli regime and undermine the resistance. Iran firmly believed that whether it was U.S.-led peace talks with the PLO or a U.S.-led dirty war in Syria, it would be utterly naive to think that the end result would not benefit Zionism. Based in Damascus, the political wing of Hamas faced a dilemma. Under pressure from internal division and external forces that deployed sectarianism to inflame emotions, it expressed support for the armed opposition. This decision came at a heavy cost: the closure of its Damascus political bureau and a severe strain on its political ties with Tehran. This was particularly damaging because Tehran itself relied on Syria to provide logistical support to resistance organizations, including Hamas. Yet even as political relations with the political wing led by Khalid Mashal chilled, Iran made a strategic and moral distinction. It remained the only nation to back the military wing of Hamas and its allies, such as Palestinian Islamic Jihad. This revealed a core principle: Iran stands with the oppressed, even when it believes some are being deceived by the empire. See you next week.